So, as many of you know, a benefit of pre-ordering Fallout 76 means that you get beta access, which means you get to play the game early within a couple of set windows that Bethesda has planned out. I, being a Fallout fan, have pre-ordered 76 and have been able to get my hands on the beta. This video is more so just going to be my thoughts on the beta and things that Bethesda can do moving forward to improve the game. There's some things that I like, some things that I don't like, and I'll be getting into those here shortly. This video isn't scripted in any way, I just kind of turned on the mic and I'm talking, so if it seems a little bit more scrambled than some of the other videos, that's why, but I just felt that this would be the best way for me to get my thoughts out. So to start with, I'll talk about my overall thoughts on Fallout 76 itself, based on what I played. I was able to play about 8 hours of the beta by the time of recording this, and I'll probably have another 2 hours played before the beta ends. My history with Fallout. Fallout 3 is my second favorite game of all time, second only to Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. In terms of Fallout New Vegas, I think New Vegas plays the best, in terms of like gameplay systems being varied and deep, but I think Fallout 3 set the baseline for what New Vegas could become, and I played Fallout 3 first, so that's why I put it higher on my list. And then Fallout 4 came out, and I really enjoyed Fallout 4. I don't think Fallout 4 is better than 3 or New Vegas, but I still think it's a really fun game. It's just a different kind of experience than 3 or New Vegas. So going into Fallout 76, if you enjoy Fallout 4, you enjoy the loop that they present in Fallout 4, you enjoy going out, the more first-person shootery focus, loot everything, and go and build stuff, you will probably have a fun time with Fallout 76. This game, as it's been talked about through the NoClip documentary and other avenues, this is the multiplayer test that they made for Fallout 4, because if you don't know, Bethesda always makes a multiplayer mode for their games to test the waters, and then in years past, they've always been scrapped, but this time they felt they had something special with Fallout 4, so they went and turned it into its own game, and that's Fallout 76. So, if you go into the beta, or you go into the game knowing that it's basically the multiplayer mode designed for Fallout 4, then you shouldn't really have too terrible of a time. I will also say, if you're looking for just any way to jump back into the Fallout universe, like you're really itching to play a new experience, explore a new world, you will probably like Fallout 76 as well. I'll get into some of those reasons later as to why, but just know that if you're really itching to get back into a Fallout game, you might want to give 76 a try. If you're expecting a Fallout 5 out of Fallout 76, deep role playing, a bunch of feedback from Fallout 4 taken into consideration and all that, you may not enjoy your time as much. And also, if the multiplayer doesn't particularly interest you, you may also not be super into this game. That said, I'm not one way or the other on multiplayer. I think that I've been playing the entire beta solo, and I've been having a fun time just by myself doing things, but I know that I'm not everybody, and some people just get really turned off by the idea of multiplayer in games. Moving on from that, let's just talk about some things that I noticed throughout my time playing the beta. For one, the exploration is great. The world design that they have created for West Virginia, I think, is really interesting. Setting it so far in the timeline, or so early in the timeline, I should say, for Fallout, 25 years after the bombs fell. It's really neat because the world is a lot more colorful, even more so than Fallout 4, which was way more colorful than 3 in New Vegas. Uh, Basically, the world hasn't had a chance really to die yet. So, you, like, the starting area, which they've shown off in a bunch of the trailers and everything, like, it's fall leaves, it looks beautiful. They added the new, or I don't know if it's added, but they included a new lighting system, I believe, because everything just looks way better than Fallout 4. And just going around to new locations, I mean, that's the one thing that Bethesda's always gotten really good in my mind, is just exploring. Going out there, seeing the random little diner out on the distance. You walk up to it, explore it, go in, loot it, and all that. All of that feels really great. I didn't get a chance to explore a lot of the world, but of the bits that I did find, I already have a couple locations in my mind that stick out, which seems to be an improvement over Fallout 4, because beyond Diamond City and one or two other places like the Institute and the Pridwin or something, Fallout 4 doesn't really have that many memorable locations, especially not when you compare it to 3 or New Vegas, where people could describe to you where each special point is on each part of the map. But I think that's a good sign that 76 seemingly has that already in the small slice that I played. It gives more personality to the locations you're exploring and makes a better connection, I think. I love the music selections for the game. The ambient tracks that they recorded with Einon Zur, they are pretty much the best that I've heard so far. The radio music, that's one of the big things that I always look forward to when a new Fallout comes out, is seeing what music they have in it. And it seems to me, I could be wrong, but it seems like they have the entire Fallout 4 soundtrack on there from the radio, and at least double, if not a little bit more than double, new songs, and that's really great. There's no songs that really stand out as annoying, like no Johnny Guitar or anything like that, but it just feels great when there's so much variety in the music that the songs don't get old after replaying a couple times. Sure, the songs could repeat maybe one after like another 20 minutes or something and you hear the same one, but again, it's not frequent enough to where any of them get old, and I just really like the amount and variety of songs that they picked. One of the big features that they brought back to the combat that was missing in Fallout 4 was weapon degradation. I think it's nice to have again. It feels consistent with the older Fallouts with how fast weapons would break. The only difference being is that you can't just recycle multiple weapons into repairing them. You have to go to a workbench and fix them that way with your junk scraps. I don't really have a problem with this. A lot of the systems are focused on workbenches, and that's sort of a carryover from Fallout 4, so I didn't think that they were going to drastically change that. It's nice to have back. I do think it makes the combat a little bit more challenging when you're in the middle of a fight and your weapon breaks and you have to go switch out to something on the fly. I like that that's back in the game. In terms of some glitches and bugs I ran into, seeing as it is a beta, that's expected. Whenever I would go to a weapon workbench, sometimes I would get this weird graphical glitch that just had a bunch of, I don't even know how to describe it, it's like a bunch of squares all over the screen. On the first day of the beta, I had found a abandoned power armor frame, and whenever I tried to get into it, it soft locked my character, and I could open up the map, but I couldn't do anything other than that, so I ended up having to restart the game, and that fixed it. It just sent me somewhere sort of nearby, and I went back and was able to get the frame fine on that attempt, but that's one issue that should be looked into. There are some texture pop-in glitches. That's pretty par for the course, to be honest. There's some AI glitches where, I'll get into the AI in a minute, but like they would clip through geometry and just kind of disappear for a little bit. So I mentioned the AI. That is easily, I think, the worst part of the game as it stands right now. I'm really hoping that the AI gets fixed before the launch of the game, because it is just dog shit. Like, the enemies come in waves and they get hyper focused on one thing. In the case of the Scorched or the super mutants, sometimes they just stand still and shoot at you. They won't go for cover, they won't get out of the way of your shots or anything. They just stand still. If I have footage of it, I fought the Grafton monster at one point, and it's one of those like big special enemies that you find in the Appalachia wasteland. And he just kind of stood there and let me chuck grenades and shoot him. For as much as the weapon degradation adds a bit of strategy back into the combat, the AI just makes combat a breeze because it's not hard at all. The enemies don't put up any sort of fight, and that is the one majorly disappointing area of the beta so far. It's just that each time I can just stand still, pop off however many shots I need, maybe take a hit or two, and then I'm good for most of the fights. It makes combat kind of boring. So I hope that gets fixed in the future. Some things about the variety in the game. They talked about how they have designed like 3 times the amount of mutated creatures and all that for enemies, which is cool. I haven't really gotten a chance to experience it because I'm assuming that a lot of these different mutated creatures are in the other parts of the wasteland, the 6 different regions. In terms of starting out, it felt like I was fighting a lot of the same enemies in many of the different places I would go to. So it was either super mutants, scorched, or feral ghouls, and some places would just have like mole rats or mongrels or something like that. Occasionally, some robots as well. I don't know how much I can comment on it, just because I don't know if I go to these other regions, how much they will just balloon out and there'll be like way other cool enemies that I'll be fighting. But it just kind of felt a little bit like, oh, I look at this cool new area. Let's see who I'm gonna fight. Oh, it's the Scorched again, or oh, it's Super Mutants again. Maybe if spawns were adjusted in some way to get some newer variety into different areas, I think it could be better. The new weapons that they added to the game are pretty nice. A lot of melee focused weapons, which I think is kind of the goal. They didn't want to add a whole lot of new guns, but there are some new pistols, new rifles. I got a giant 50 cal up from this one area, which is a really cool new heavy weapon. Not able to use it because of the weapon level locks, which I had talked about in my. I had talked about, I think it was in a podcast that Shane and I did. We talked about the level locked loot and how that was never in Fallout, and I found that kind of disappointing. I still don't think I like it per se, but I can say that while I was playing, it didn't really affect me one way or another. It kind of just feels like the Borderlands system where you get a weapon that you're underleveled for, and you're like, oh, well, I'll be able to use that in the future. It didn't really affect me as much as I thought it might have from the outset. The card leveling system. I like this system a good bit, actually. I don't know if this is just playing on nostalgia because I used to collect trading cards as a kid and everything, and that was always a big source of entertainment for me. So I just kind of like getting the cards. They all look nice. I like the perk art on them. It just kind of makes sense for a card setup. And I like the interchangeability of the system that it allows, where you put your point into special, you unlock more slots that you can have perk cards in, and then you can pick and choose what cards you want to have. If you want to have a bunch of 1 level cards, or if you combine them to have a level 3 card and that takes up your 3 spots. I really like that gameplay design. I don't think I would trade it for the old system, suggesting like if we get a Fallout 5 probably a decade from now. I think that they should still do the level up, put your points into wherever you want, and pick a perk. But I do think that this system suits the game Fallout 76 well. So yeah, I wouldn't replace it in a future game with this card system, but I also don't think that there's anything really wrong with the card system. I like the survival elements that they added into the game, the food and thirst, basically, the hunger and thirst meters. It incorporates more of those hardcore elements into it and makes it more of a survival game, which is, I think, what they were going for in 76. And they're nice additions. They haven't really been that obtrusive to the gameplay experience. You usually are able to find some food or some water to be able to drink to remedy those whenever you need to. It's just something else to keep track of, and it makes the game a little bit more immersive. The settlement mode slash camp system, whatever you want to call it, I think it's okay in its current form, but it needs some tweaking. The ability to put the camp anywhere and build anywhere, that's all great. I think that's a natural evolution of the Fallout 4 settlement system. It's just a nice thing to have, to be able to build wherever you want. The biggest problem I have with it is that every item in the settlement system is only unlockable by finding plans, which I know is part of the reason why they did it, was just like you want to go out and find these things that you can then bring back to build with. There is a carry weight problem early on in the game where obviously you're picking up all this junk and everything because you want to have materials to build with, and you have a stash box which you're allowed to put your stuff into, and only you can access those items. But the problem is that the box has a set limit and you can only build one. If you build multiple stash boxes, they just share the same loot, so you can't build multiple cases, and at the start of the game, that's the only storage case that you have. All of them are all locked unless you get lucky and find a plan. In terms of the locked categories within the building system, I think that they should unlock the first item in each category, just so that you can have something else to remedy the problem of carry weight and have a little bit of just like a bunch of different pieces that you can build with right out of the gate. So like if it's like a bunch of doors, just like unlock like a red door or something in addition to the base door, because I think there is a door that you can get already. But like specifically with the cases, like unlock the foot locker or something that we can just put down to put loot into. That way we can get rid of the carry weight problem, and it would just be a lot easier. You can still keep a lot of the plans out there to go and find, because it's a decent reward. You always get that little tingle of, oh, I found something unique here, and it's a plan for a new thing. But I definitely seemingly find the food and like the recipe plans a lot more than I find furniture and crafting material plans. So it'd be nice to have it tweaked just a little bit. The actual multiplayer components I haven't had a whole lot of experience with. As I said, I played solo for most of my time during the beta, but I have run across a couple different people. Me and this other guy, just out of the blue, were tackling an event together where we had to defend these machines inside of a food processing factory from ghouls and the like. And that was pretty fun. It pretty much flowed organically. I never got into PvP. I did try to do the Hunter Hunted mode a couple times, but you need to opt in to that mode to be able to play it, and I never was able to find enough people that were opting in to start it up, because you need a minimum of 4. I think if they plan on doing PvP in the future, like there have been talks about Team Deathmatch mode and everything like that, I think that there should be a separate server that's dedicated to Team Deathmatch, so that way people can go there with the goal of playing PvP. I don't want it to be the sort of opt-in kind of thing that the Hunter Hunted mode has, because you can never rely on a bunch of people wanting to just do PvP unless you have a dedicated group that's going in with the express goal of doing PvP. So I would hope that in the future with other PvP centered modes that they figure out a way to just include it, but on like separate servers than the PvE survival full map servers. VATS is interesting, to say the least. I still think it's a little awkward to use, and what other people have been saying as it's more of a tool to find people than to use seriously, I would agree with, at least early on. I haven't put many perk points into, or perk cards into VATS based skills, so I can't say if it actually does get better the further on you play. Just can't really comment on that yet, but it does still feel a little bit weird having the full in real-time VATS. I think what they could have done, now I say this like it's easy, like this could just happen over a dinner conversation, but I think Max Payne 3 had multiplayer, and they included the slow motion diving stuff, and the way that they did it was that if somebody activated their slow motion dive ability, anything that was in that person's cone of vision would feel the effect of the slow-mo, while everything else around them would continue on in real time. I think if Bethesda maybe talked with Rockstar or the developers of Max Payne 3, whatever branch of Rockstar that was, if they tried to incorporate a similar system where everything in the cone of vision of that person would be affected by the slow-mo of VATS, I think it would have been a great way to incorporate that VATS from Fallout 4 into the real-time multiplayer game of Fallout 76. I'm sure it probably would be a nightmare. To be honest, I'm surprised the game runs as well as it does for it being their first ever attempt at multiplayer with their original code. If they were able to incorporate VATS in 76 that way, I think most of my issues with the system would become null and void. I've got to say that despite the problems that people have with Fallout 76, or the problems that I may have with it, I very much appreciate Bethesda going pretty bold with this game in a new direction. And by that I mean deciding to go with multiplayer, something that they've never done before. I think it's commendable, whether it's good or bad, that they decided to do something so drastically different. Now, some people will argue that it's against what they said because they had the whole Saved Player One campaign a few years ago. But I think it's just commendable that they were able to try something this new and get it working as well as it is, as funny as that may sound. I would rather Bethesda take risks than just get stuck in their own way, if that makes sense. And that's why I'm most excited about Starfield coming in the next few years, because it's a symbol of something new from Bethesda. Now, obviously, fan backlash has been pretty loud and prominent towards Fallout 76, but I think post-launch, give it a couple months, it'll probably blow over, and the people that truly enjoy Fallout 76 will still be playing it. I don't think there's going to be a problem with that. In terms of questing and story giving and the whole every human is a real human, I think there's pros and cons to it. It really strengthens the environmental storytelling that Bethesda is really good at. Stumbling upon a random little setup in a house, have this one picture with the photo mode is at a carnival and there's just a skeleton with his arms behind his head sliding down. I thought that was really funny. It really strengthens their ability to go through that and add some context to those things. The problems I have basically are the questing feels a little empty without strong NPCs that are giving you quests. So think back to Fallout 4. If you think Brotherhood of Steel, your mind goes to Elder Maxon. If you think the Minutemen, it goes to Preston Garvey. You think Institute, it's Father, all that. You have these memorable characters that give you these quests to go on. In Fallout 76, quests just kind of happen, it seems. They just kind of appear, and you go do them because there's no dialogue system. There's no, like, really interactive element. You have the emotes, but that's more so for the real players. You wouldn't just go up to a robot and emote to him. So, like, the questing just feels a little empty at times. It feels very much more gamey than an immersive experience, and that's something that usually gets equated to Bethesda as making these immersive worlds. And it's just with this one, I don't know if it's as a result of it just being multiplayer and they couldn't really incorporate dialogue that way that they would want to. It just feels a little odd and, like I said, empty. You just, oh, this tower needs fixing, go fix the tower. Oh, you fixed it, here's your quest rewards, not given to you from anybody. They just kind of appear in your inventory. That's more of a design decision that I don't think I fully agree with. But I did say in my playing devil's advocate with Fallout 76 video, I talked about the lack of NPCs, and I still stand by what I said, in that in the months or years coming after Fallout 76, they could easily design a DLC or a free update that maybe includes a new faction. Maybe some time has passed, like in real life, some time has passed and a new faction has started to take its roots in West Virginia, and these are NPC characters that you can go and interact with, go and trade with, go fight new enemies. I think that that is still entirely a possibility on the table, and if Bethesda would design that and implement it into the game, I think that it would A, give a lot more variety to the other systems that I have issues with, and B, would also give more depth and meaning to the questing in the game, depending on how they tackle it. Who knows? They could add it in, and they could just be more fodder for people to kill. But yeah, those are basically my thoughts on the Fallout 76 beta. The game comes out November 14th, and I will obviously be playing it, and I'll probably either review it or talk about it in some other fashion. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, maybe subscribe and watch some of our other stuff, and I will see you in the next video.